The Foreign Demon region lay at the very heart of the Eastern Mystery region. It was an area renowned throughout the region, deeply etched into the minds of its inhabitants. The ancient war between heaven and earth had long faded into the distant past, so much so that no one truly remembered the cause of that titanic battle. However, what people did know was that countless ancient powerhouses had fallen within the Foreign Demon region, leaving behind a perilous landscape littered with alluring ancient relics and legacies. Even during ordinary times, the vicinity of the Foreign Demon region was bustling with activity. Despite the immense danger within, waves of powerful individuals continuously streamed in, one after another. In this world, the allure of treasure was a temptation too great to resist, causing people to disregard even the looming threat of death. Outside the Foreign Demon region, numerous cities had sprung up. Among them, the Foreign Demon city stood as the most grandiose and sprawling. Due to the chaotic mix of people living there, the city had no official governance. Yet, as with any place where people congregate, rules naturally emerged, both overt and hidden. To survive in such a place, one had to abide by these rules, and so, despite its lack of a ruler, Foreign Demon City had existed in a precarious order under the shadow of these unspoken laws. As the massive contingent from Dao Sect gradually made its way into the Foreign Demon region, they could see the skies filled with figures from all directions, rushing toward the same destination. It was clear that everyone's goal was identical. As one of the grandest events in the Eastern Mystery region, the Sect competition clearly carried an undeniable pull, attracting attention from all corners. "What a spectacular sight!" Lin Dong murmured, a hint of admiration flickering in his eyes. Though he had experienced the 100 Empire War before, which had also been a significant event in terms of quality, it paled compared to the Sect competition. After all, during the 100 Empire War, a powerhouse at the 6th Nirvana stage was already considered top tier. But here, that level merely qualified one to participate. "We've already entered the Foreign Demon region. It shouldn't be long before we reach Foreign Demon City. When we get there, you'll know what true magnificence is, ha ha ha." Pang Tong, standing beside Lin Dong, laughed heartily. Lin Dong nodded slightly, gazing into the distance. Ever since they had entered this region, the ground beneath them had taken on a dark, ominous hue. The further they advanced, the darker it became, until even the sky above seemed to turn black, creating an oppressive atmosphere. This dark color unsettled Lin Dong somewhat. He had glimpsed scenes left behind by ancient times and knew just how terrifying and evil the unknown dark creatures could be. Given that this was the site of an ancient battlefield where heaven and earth had once clashed, no one knew what hidden dangers might still lurk here. As Lin Dong pondered in silence, the vast group pressed forward swiftly. After about a dozen minutes, a towering mountain loomed ahead, and a thunderous clamor suddenly exploded from the heavens and earth. The noise snapped Lin Dong out of his thoughts. As he lifted his head, his gaze landed on a sprawling black city stretching endlessly into the distance, like an ancient black dragon lying in wait, emanating a cold and desolate aura. Around the black city, the skies swarmed with people, entering and exiting like a plague of locusts. The deafening roar of noise washed over the land, enveloping the entire area. "That's Foreign Demon City?" Pang Tong pointed toward the colossal black structure in the distance, grinning as he spoke. "Follow me into the city. Foreign Demon City is filled with all sorts of characters. Everyone, be cautious." Chi Lei, at the forefront of the group, warned sternly. He exchanged a glance with the other 3 hall masters before leading the group toward the massive city. Though the area around Foreign Demon City was crowded with people, few groups matched the size of Dao Sect's contingent of several hundred. As they neared the city, they immediately attracted a wave of attention from the masses. "Heh, is that Dao Sect? Even they've arrived, huh?" As expected of one of the 8 super sects, bringing 4 life mystique stage experts as leaders. Quite the impressive lineup. The competition isn't about them, though. It's about the disciples. I heard Dao Sect suffered greatly in the last sect competition, even losing their most outstanding disciple to Yuan Sect. Those Yuan Sect folks really are ruthless. Yeah, the enmity between Yuan Sect and Dao Sect runs deep. It'll be interesting to see who comes out on top this time. Probably still Yuan's sect. The three minor kings of Yuan's sect are practically legends. I doubt anyone from Dao Sect's younger generation can match them. I've heard Dao Sect has a promising newcomer named Lin Dong. Apparently, he even defeated Yao Ling from the demonic Mark clan. Yeah, I heard about that, but Yao Ling is nothing compared to the three minor kings. This sect competition is going to be quite the show. The murmurs of gossip spread rapidly, with some of it reaching the ears of the Dao Sect disciples, causing many of them to look angry and resentful. Damn Yuan Sect, if I don't take out a few of them this time, how can I face my junior brothers back at Wild Hall? Jiang Hao growled, his face dark with rage. Several nearby Dao Sect disciples nodded in agreement. Lin Dong pursed his lips. It seemed the grudge between Dao Sect and Yuan Sect was indeed deep. If they encountered each other in the foreign demon region, a peaceful resolution seemed highly unlikely. While the disciples seethed with indignation, Qi Lei and the other leaders remained calm, indifferent to the chatter. Just as they were about to lead the disciples into the city, Qi Lei suddenly paused, glancing toward another part of the sky where the sound of rushing wind heralded the arrival of another large group of people. Who are they? Lin Dong narrowed his eyes, watching as the new arrivals approached. They, too, numbered in the hundreds, and their gray robes exuded an ominous, chilling aura. The myriad puppet sect, Pang Tong muttered under his breath. Oh! Lin Dong raised an eyebrow. The myriad puppet sect was another of the 8 super sects, though their combat style was uniquely troublesome. Each disciple of the sect possessed a life puppet, and having once owned a puppet himself, Lin Dong knew exactly how formidable these constructs could be. See that guy at the front? If I'm not mistaken, that's Ghostly, the most talented of the myriad puppet sect's younger generation. Ghostly, Lin Dong repeated, his gaze following Pang Tong's. There, standing behind 2 gray-robed elders, was a tall, cold-faced young man. His complexion was deathly pale, and the chilling aura radiating from him indicated that he had reached the 9th Nirvana stage. Apparently, his life puppet has also been refined to the 9th level, making it just as powerful as a 9th Nirvana stage expert. If we run into him, we'll need to be careful. A hint of surprise flickered across Lin Dong's eyes. A 9th level puppet, that meant in battle, this guy could effectively fight 2-on-1. As Lin Dong observed the gray-robed youth, the latter seemed to notice his gaze. His cold, gray eyes shifted toward Lin Dong, and a faint chill, as if piercing through space, enveloped him. Lin Dong's expression remained calm as his invisible spiritual energy expanded outward, instantly dispelling the clinging chill like an irritating parasite. His spiritual power contained a trace of devouring energy, which not only dispersed the chill, but also devoured it entirely. Oh! The gray-robed youth's eyes finally showed a hint of surprise when his cold energy was swallowed. The icy aura was unique to the myriad puppet sect and usually caused headaches for those it ensnared. Yet this disciple from Dao Sect had easily neutralized it. Interesting. I didn't expect Dao Sect to have someone like this besides EngSubs. The gray-robed youth chuckled quietly before slowly withdrawing his gaze. Let's go. The 2 gray-robed elders in front of the gray-robed youth exchanged glances with Qi Lei and his companions, then, without saying much, waved their hands and led the disciples of the myriad puppet sect into the city. After they entered the city, Qi Lei also led the Dao Sect group toward a different direction within the city. In the skies above, onlookers watched the arrival of the 2 great super sects, rubbing their hands in anticipation. This grand event in the Eastern Mystery region was finally beginning, and people were eager to see which faction would dominate this time. The disciples of Dao Sect, led by Qi Lei and the other 3, settled in the western part of Foreign Demon City. Once there, they were allowed to roam freely, though they were warned to be cautious. Despite their numbers, Foreign Demon City was a chaotic place filled with unruly characters who would not necessarily be intimidated by the prestige of a super sect. After days of traveling, Lin Dong had originally planned to rest and cultivate, but before he could settle down, Huan came to find him. Unable to resist her persistent requests, he agreed to go out with her. Just as they stepped out the door, they bumped into EngSubs and Wang Yin. Seeing EngSubs, Huan glanced away awkwardly, while Xiao shot her a teasing look before turning to Lin Dong. We were just about to head out as well. Why don't we all go together? Besides, the treasure zone in Foreign Demon City is quite interesting. I'm sure you'll enjoy it, junior brother Lin Dong. Treasure zone? Lin Dong blinked in surprise. Since Foreign Demon City is near the Foreign Demon region, treasure hunters often venture inside and return with various relics. While most of these items are damaged, there are occasionally rare ancient objects that no one recognizes. If you have a sharp eye and manage to find something valuable, it could be quite the windfall, Xiao explained. I heard that someone once found a pure primordial treasure there. The seller was so upset when he realized it that he tried to reclaim it, sparking a massive brawl. The entire Foreign Demon City was thrown into chaos, and many unfortunate souls were caught in the crossfire. A pure primordial treasure? Lin Dong was taken aback. Such treasures were incredibly rare, even for a super sect. No wonder the seller was so disgruntled. Well, that does sound interesting. Gradually shaking off his surprise, Lin Dong rubbed his chin with a smile, genuinely intrigued. All right, let's go check out the treasure zone. The treasure zone was located in the northern part of Foreign Demon City. It was one of the most popular areas in the city, with a reputation for the relatively high quality of items found there. Assuming, of course, that one had enough Nirvana pills. When Lin Dong and the others entered the treasure zone, the deafening noise hit them like a flood, causing their eardrums to throb slightly. The treasure zone was vast, but even so, the broad streets were packed with a sea of people. As they moved deeper into the area, Lin Dong spotted several smooth, giant blue stones. Covered in glowing shields, they served as booths for vendors, who sat behind them with various strange and rare items displayed, drawing the attention of passers-by. Ancient martial arts, cloud-grasping grand palm, comparable to high-tier spiritual martial arts. Only 8 million Nirvana pills. Reviving pill, a holy pill for healing. As long as you have a breath left, you'll be up and running in no time. 7 million Nirvana pills. Walking through the treasure zone, Lin Dong and his companions heard countless such calls, and they couldn't help but chuckle. At first, they had been drawn in by the claims, but soon realized that most of the so-called ancient martial arts were just ordinary spiritual techniques, and the pills were just simple healing elixirs with grand names. Huan, however, seemed to enjoy the lively atmosphere. Her youthful energy was evident as she flitted through the crowd like a butterfly, her ponytail bouncing with every step, catching many admiring glances. As the four of them ventured deeper into the treasure zone, the number of stalls gradually decreased, but the items on display became more intriguing, even eliciting some surprise from Lin Dong. These deeper areas are where you find the real treasures. Anyone selling things here has a few tricks up their sleeve, Xiao remarked. Noticing Lin Dong's expression, there are quite a few disciples from the super sects here, Wang Yin added coolly. Lin Dong glanced around and, sure enough, spotted several young figures bearing sect emblems on their chests. They all had similar looks of pride on their faces, clearly indicating that they were participants in the sect competition. After a brief look, Lin Dong turned his attention back to the strange items displayed on the blue stones around him, continuing his leisurely stroll. Just then, a commotion ahead caught his attention. Looking up, he saw a crowd gathering, and faintly, the sound of a girl's indignant shout reached his ears. Hearing the voice, Lin Dong, Xiao, and Wang Yin all paused for a moment. Glancing around, they realized that Huan was no longer with them. With furrowed brows, they quickened their pace toward the crowd. When they reached the scene, they saw Huan standing there, her face flushed with anger. In front of her were 3 grinning young men, one of whom was tossing a jade-green hairpin back and forth. The hairpin emanated a faint but strong energy fluctuation, marking it as a fairly valuable spirit treasure. What happened? Causing trouble again? Xiao scolded, frowning as she glared at Huan. That's not true. I was the one who saw the spirit treasure first, and I even agreed on a price with the vendor. Then these 3 jerks came out of nowhere and snatched it. Huan said indignantly. Lin Dong frowned slightly, casting his gaze toward the 3 men. His eyes narrowed as he noticed a familiar emblem on their chests. Disciples of Yuan Sect? At his words, Wang Yan's expression darkened as a menacing aura emanated from him. He began to step forward. Wang Yan? EngSubs? When two of the Yuan Sect disciples saw Wang Yan and EngSubs, their faces changed immediately, their eyes shifting toward the man standing beside them, whose smile had faded. It was clear that this man was their leader. Heh, Wang Yan. I thought you'd been kicked out of Dao Sect. I didn't expect you'd still be able to participate in the sect competition. The man furrowed his brow, his tone mocking. His previous actions were motivated by a desire to tease the innocent-looking Huan, not realizing she was from Dao Sect. Though the situation had taken an unexpected turn, he showed no signs of panic, instead sneering at Wang Yan. His name is Jiang Tao, not just any ordinary disciple. He's one of the 8 spirit generals of Yuan Sect. I didn't think we'd run into him here, EngSubs whispered to Lin Dong. Another one of the 8 spirit generals. Lin Dong raised an eyebrow, surprised. He had initially thought they were just regular disciples of Yuan Sect, but now that he knew this man's identity, it was clear why he remained calm even in the face of Wang Yan. Hand it over and get lost, Wang Yan said coldly, his voice low as he slowly gripped the hilt of the heavy sword on his back, revealing a chilling smile. Huh. Here, you can buy anything as long as you haven't paid for it yet. Who do you think you are, telling me to get lost? Jiang Tao's eyes gleamed with malice as he laughed eerily. If you won't leave, then I'll just have to beat you until you do, Wang Yan said, his fingers tightening around the sword as he bared his teeth in a deadly grin. Trying to outnumber me? Go ahead, try it. Jiang Tao sneered as he flicked his wrist, sending a jade token into the air. The token exploded in a burst of light, transforming into the Yuan Sect emblem. Whoosh, whoosh. As the emblem lit up the sky, the sound of rushing wind filled the air as numerous figures shot toward the scene. Clearly, Yuan Sect disciples had received the signal. Think I'm afraid of you? Huan, now fully enraged by Jiang Tao's arrogance, immediately flung a signal token of her own into the air. Swoosh, swoosh. Since the treasure zone was one of the busiest areas of Foreign Demon City, it wasn't long before numerous Dao Sect disciples noticed the glowing Dao Sect emblem in the sky. Without hesitation, they grabbed their fellow disciples, who were still busy inspecting goods, and rushed toward the source of the signal. With both sides calling for backup, the area quickly cleared as a massive circle formed around them. It seemed as though the rivalry between these two super sects was about to erupt into a full-blown fight before the sect competition had even begun. Whoosh, whoosh. More and more figures descended from the sky, landing on both sides. In just a few short minutes, the area was filled with over 100 people from each faction, the tension palpable. Many onlookers secretly marveled at the sheer presence of these super sects. In the chaotic treasure zone, the commotion had drawn countless curious gazes. Lin Dong frowned as he observed the growing confrontation. He was about to speak when his eyes suddenly narrowed, and he looked up. The air above them suddenly filled with the deafening roar of violent wind, followed by a figure wrapped in dazzling lightning, descending like a thunder god. The figure landed in front of the Yuan Sect disciples with a heavy thud. Haha, Wang Yan, you, who couldn't even beat me before, dare to tell my Yuan Sect disciples to get lost? Come on, let's see if you have the same luck as last time. A booming, arrogant laugh echoed through the area as the lightning-clad figure appeared. Upon hearing that voice, Wang Yan's face darkened completely. He glared at the figure, his voice dripping with killing intent as he growled through gritted teeth. Little Lei King, Lei Qian. Lei Qian? At the mention of that name, Lin Dong's eyes immediately sharpened as he focused on the burly figure wreathed in lightning not far ahead. So, this was one of the 3 minor kings, the Little Lei King? EngSubs furrowed her brows as well, her delicate hand gripping the hilt of her sword tightly. In her eyes, there was a trace of caution. Well, your Dao sect seems to be a bit stronger than last time. No wonder you're so full of yourselves, Lei Qian said mockingly. As the lightning around him receded, it revealed a rugged face filled with unbridled arrogance. His gaze swept over Wang Yan and the others with a playful glint in his eyes. On Lei Qian's body, faint lightning marks shimmered, and an overwhelming and violent energy radiated from him, drawing the attention of everyone around. Wang Yan's eyes were dark and filled with an intense desire to kill. However, just as he was about to step forward, a jade-like hand landed on his shoulder, stopping him. Lei Qian, control your Yuan sect disciples. Their behavior is disgraceful, more fitting for thugs, EngSubs said coldly, her gaze icy. I think my Yuan sect disciples are doing just fine. If anything, it's your Dao sect that needs to stop putting on airs, Lei Qian replied with a sneer. At these words, many of the Dao sect disciples were visibly enraged, their eyes burning with fury. Is this what you're fighting over? Lei Qian turned, taking the jade hairpin from Jiang Tao's hand. Smiling faintly, he said, All right, here's the deal. If you're capable of taking it from me, I'll not only pay for it, but also leave immediately without another word. How about that? Wang Yan's eyes grew colder as his hand gripped his heavy sword tightly. He was just about to take a step forward when he was stopped by an arm. He turned his head, frowning at the owner of the arm. Let me handle this, Lin Dong said with a smile. Both Wang Yan and EngSubs were taken aback, their brows furrowing. While they didn't doubt Lin Dong's strength, Lei Qian was no ordinary opponent. Lin Dong. Huan, startled, quickly grabbed Lin Dong's sleeve. Don't act rashly. If it's too much trouble, I can just forget about the hairpin. The young girl, who had been so furious moments ago, now looked worried. Her large, dark eyes filled with concern as she anxiously tried to dissuade Lin Dong. I shouldn't have caused trouble in the first place. Seeing her pouty, somewhat dejected expression, Lin Dong paused for a moment. Then, with a bright smile, he reached out and patted Huan's head. This isn't just about the hairpin. Some things are simply unavoidable. After saying that, he turned to Wang Yan and EngSubs, his voice calm. Leave this to me. Be careful, EngSubs said quietly. EngSubs and Wang Yan hesitated for a moment as they met Lin Dong's calm gaze, but eventually, they nodded in agreement. Lin Dong stepped forward, emerging from the Dao sect crowd, now standing in the center of attention within the bustling treasure zone. At this moment, the entire area had become the focal point of the treasure zone, as the rivalry between Yuan sect and Dao sect, two powerful super sects with a deep-seated grudge, was drawing the eyes of everyone present. A confrontation here seemed inevitable, and many onlookers were eagerly anticipating the spectacle. Not far from the confrontation, a pavilion stood tall. On its upper level, two figures, a man and a woman, gazed toward the commotion. The woman stood in front, with the man slightly behind, the subtle distance between them suggesting a difference in status. The woman, naturally, was the more striking figure. Clad in a flowing white dress, her long, silky black hair cascaded down to her slender waist. Her skin was pale as snow, and her eyebrows were delicate as if painted. Despite the veil covering her face, the faint outline of her features exuded a mesmerizing beauty that was hard to look away from. Her aura was cold and aloof, reminiscent of a moon goddess descending from the heavens, untouchable and ethereal. There was no doubt, this woman was none other than Ling Qingzhu. Beside her stood a handsome young man, his face full of smiles. Whenever his gaze fell upon Ling Qingzhu, it was filled with unconcealed admiration and infatuation. The two of them were also watching the distant scene, and when Lei Qian, the little Lei King, appeared, both showed a slight reaction. Haha, even Lei Qian has shown up. Although Dao sect has EngSubs and Wang Yan, they probably won't be able to deal with him, the young man said with a smile as he looked toward the confrontation. The Yuan sect is still as arrogant as ever, Ling Qingzhu replied coldly. The young man nodded before continuing, I wonder who will step forward, EngSubs or Wang Yan. Before he could finish speaking, he paused in surprise. His eyes showed confusion as he noticed a slim figure emerging from the crowd of Dao sect disciples. Who's that? Upon hearing this, Ling Qingzhu raised her gaze slightly and casually glanced at the figure. However, the moment her eyes landed on the young man, her normally calm and composed expression froze, a rare hint of shock flickering across her face. Her eyes locked onto the figure, her lips parted slightly, and her delicate hands, usually so serene, tightened unconsciously as emotions surged within her heart. That figure wasn't unfamiliar to her. In fact, it was deeply imprinted in her memory. Ling Qingzhu knew that while she might forget many things in this lifetime, she would never be able to forget this figure. 5 years ago, on a small mountain peak in the Great Yin Empire, they had shared a conversation. That memory still echoed vividly in her mind. When Ling Qingzhu heard his name mentioned after the conclusion of the 100 Empire War, she had been shaken. She found it hard to imagine that the frail youth she once knew had managed to rise to such heights. She knew Lin Dong's background well. Back then, even someone like Lin Langtian had been able to suppress him effortlessly, leaving him in a pitiful state. At that time, Lin Dong had seemed insignificant, like an ant in the eyes of many. It was precisely because she knew this that when she learned that Lin Dong had stepped into the Eastern Mystery region, her surprise was even greater. She understood just how much effort and determination that weak yet stubborn boy had needed to make it this far. In the span of 5 years, that once innocent youth had truly undergone a transformation. That year, on that mountain peak, she had said that their paths would never cross again. In that same year, Lin Dong had left his parents, accompanied by a mink and a tiger, embarking on a journey. No one knew how many hardships he had endured, nor how many times he had hovered between life and death. A year ago, she had heard that familiar yet distant name once again. The boy she once knew had begun to catch up to her, in his own way. This year, the boy, now a transformed young man, stood before her once more, fearless, ready to face one of the most outstanding young talents in the Eastern Mystery region. Ling Qingzhu stared at the young man as he walked forward, her lips pressed together beneath her veil. The boy from the past had defied every expectation she had once placed upon him. He was no longer the immature cub running toward the path of strength. He had grown into an eagle, soaring through the skies. Now, he no longer feared the dazzling radiance that once made it impossible for him to look directly at her. Ling Qingzhu took a quiet breath and fixed her clear eyes on the slender figure walking toward Lei Qian. Since you've come this far, let me see just how far you've really come. Under countless watchful eyes, the young man calmly stepped out from the Dao Sect crowd and stood before Lei Qian. His face, though youthful, showed no trace of fear, and instead, a faint smile played across his lips. Who is he? The onlookers stared at Lin Dong in surprise. Most of them had expected either Wang Yin or EngSubs to step forward, as they were the only ones among the Dao Sect disciples capable of standing against Lei Qian. This young man, however, didn't seem to be on their level. Wang Yin, did you let this newbie step up because you think I, Lei Qian, am a charitable person? Lei Qian sneered, glancing dismissively at Lin Dong. At Lei Qian's words, the Yuan Sect disciples behind him burst into laughter, their gazes filled with mockery as they looked at Lin Dong. Lin Dong of Dao Sect, at your service, Lin Dong said with a slight smile, clasping his hands in respect toward Lei Qian. Lin Dong. The name caused Lei Qian to pause briefly, and the laughter of the Yuan Sect disciples behind him quickly died down. Their gazes sharpened, as if recognizing the name. He's the one who defeated Yao Ling? Zhang Tao asked in surprise. So he has some small reputation after all? Lei Qian was momentarily taken aback, but then he smiled faintly. Reaching out, he held the jade hairpin in his palm, its green light glowing softly. I've heard a bit about you. Since you want to make a name for yourself, I'll give you the chance. If you can take this from me, the deal still stands, Lei Qian said, his smile gradually turning icy. But let me remind you, I, Lei Qian, don't hold back. If you end up dead or crippled, you'll have only yourself to blame. Lin Dong smiled faintly, but deep within his eyes, a cold gleam flashed. As the two stood face to face, the onlookers instinctively retreated, creating more space for the impending clash. Curious eyes focused on the pair, eager to see what this young disciple of Dao Sect could do against one of the 3 minor kings of Yuan Sect, Lei Qian. Lin Dong, be careful. EngSubs called out, her eyes filled with concern as she watched Lin Dong's figure. Lin Dong nodded slightly, and without further hesitation, stepped forward. In the next instant, his eyes sharpened, and a surge of powerful primordial energy erupted from him. His figure transformed into a blur of light, streaking straight toward Lei Qian. His intent was clear. He was going for a direct confrontation. Fool! Seeing Lin Dong's actions, the Yuan Sect disciples immediately sneered. Lin Dong was only at the 7th Nirvana stage, and while he might possess extraordinary combat abilities, Lei Qian was far superior to Yao Ling in every way. Even EngSubs, Wang Yin, and the others frowned at Lin Dong's reckless approach. However, they knew him well enough to trust that he wouldn't act rashly without reason. If he had chosen to face Lei Qian head-on, he must have had a plan. SCZ. The glowing blur of Lin Dong's form expanded in Lei Qian's eyes. A mocking smile spread across Lei Qian's face as brilliant lightning once again surged from his body. The violent fluctuations of his primordial energy were far beyond what an ordinary 9th Nirvana stage expert could produce. Impressive speed, but it's useless against me. Lei Qian's voice was dripping with disdain. His face suddenly hardened, and with a single step forward, the radiant lightning coalesced into a roaring lion's head around his fist. Thunder Lion Fist. Lei Qian's fist shot out, accompanied by the deafening roar of a lion mixed with thunder. The air trembled as shockwaves of lightning spread outward, and the ground beneath them cracked like a spiderweb. He was ruthless in his attack, showing no mercy to Lin Dong despite the latter's lower strength. If this punch landed, even a 9th Nirvana stage expert would be gravely injured. Whoosh! Both figures moved at blistering speeds, and in the blink of an eye, they were about to collide like two meteors. From the looks of it, Lin Dong was completely outmatched, and Lei Qian's punch would likely devastate him. However, as the clash neared, Lin Dong's face remained composed, devoid of any panic. His black eyes were as calm as a still pond, unaffected by the looming danger. As the ferocious Thunder Lion Fist enlarged in Lin Dong's gaze, just as everyone's hearts collectively tightened, a strange smile suddenly appeared on his lips. His hands formed a mysterious seal, and a ripple of energy spread outward. In that instant, just as Lei Qian's thunderous punch was about to strike Lin Dong's chest, it abruptly froze in midair. The freeze lasted only for a split second, but in a battle between experts, that was all it took to determine the victor. Whoosh! In that fleeting moment, Lin Dong's figure ghosted past Lei Qian. Boom! As the two figures crossed paths, a muffled sound reverberated. Then, in the shocked eyes of the onlookers, Lei Qian's face abruptly flushed red. A force exploded from his chest, and his body was sent flying backward, crashing heavily into a massive stone slab. The impact shattered the stone into dust on the spot. Silence fell over the area. The Yuan Sect disciples who had been sneering moments ago were left utterly stunned. They stared blankly at the scene, unable to comprehend what had just happened. How could the Dao Sect boy not be the one sent flying? What? Even EngSubs, Wang Yin, and the others were taken aback. The speed of the exchange had been so fast that even they hadn't fully grasped what had transpired. What should have been an explosive confrontation had ended in a baffling and unexpected twist. Amidst the dead silence, countless shocked gazes turned to Lin Dong's slender figure. He stood completely unscathed, as though Lei Qian's fierce punch had never even touched him. Bang! In the distance, the rubble stirred as Lei Qian crawled up, disheveled and furious. A dark red palm print was clearly visible on his chest, and his face was twisted with rage and disbelief. His bloodshot eyes locked onto Lin Dong's figure, and with a roar, he bellowed, "I'm going to tear you apart." He charged forward like an enraged beast, his overwhelming killing intent palpable in the air. However, after only taking several steps, he suddenly stopped in his tracks. His eyes widened as he saw Lin Dong raise his hand. There, resting calmly in Lin Dong's palm, was the jade hairpin, its soft glow almost taunting as it flickered in Lei Qian's direction. The hairpin had already been taken. All around, jaws dropped slightly. The Yuan Sect disciples stared in disbelief, their faces drained of color as though they were drowning, terror filling their eyes. A breeze stirred the dust on the ground, and as it drifted away, it left behind a crowd of stunned onlookers. What they had anticipated to be a thrilling battle had come to such an absurd and unexpected conclusion. The result was far beyond anyone's expectations, including Lei Qian's. When he saw the hairpin in Lin Dong's hand, his face twisted in disbelief. Pay up. Lin Dong toyed with the hairpin in his hand, glanced at Lei Qian, and said nonchalantly. His voice echoed through the now eerily silent area. In the distant pavilion, the cold and ethereal beauty, Ling Qingzhu, watched the scene unfold. For the first time, a hint of shock flickered in her calm, lake-like eyes.